Susan to come up and join us at the table. We have 5 members, so we can take 2 more voting members. Zach, if you're happy to hang out where you are, you're welcome, but if you'd like to be a part of the discussion a little closer, you're welcome to sit in the awkward back to the audience chair.
Also the awkward chair. I don't mind being awkward.
Nice to have a desk either way.
Yeah. A little bit more space to use a chair.
Okay, I call the meeting to order. We'll do a roll call of members. Mary Ann.
Here.
Mike.
Here.
Phil.
Here.
Rebecca is here. John.
Present.
Susan.
Here.
Mike Bouchard. And Zach.
Here.
So we've got, I'd like to invite Susan and Michael Bouchard to be to join us as a voting member. Zach, please participate in the conversation as our select board alternative, but pipe down when it's time to vote. All right. June.
So I just, at the start of the meeting, I had let Rebecca know that I actually had a short little statement I wanted to make in regards to our last meeting, and also about all planning board meetings, I guess. So I just wrote this up. We had a number of people attending the August 5th planning board meeting, which was nice to see. There were signs posted at the entryway downstairs and on the table in the back of the room informing people of the town hall COVID-19 policy regarding wearing masks. The signs clearly state that those who are not fully vaccinated must continue to wear a mask when entering and while in town hall, and masks were definitely available during the meeting and before the meeting. So I have been told that several members of the community were attending the meeting on August 5th, sat here and openly discussed the fact they were not vaccinated. They did not wear masks during the meeting, and they were sitting very close to other people. It is very disappointing and unfortunate that we have members of the community that are not willing to follow a town policy. The select board adopted the town COVID-19 policies, not the planning board. If people do not like the policy, they should discuss it with the select board. The planning board gives a tremendous amount of time to the community, and it does its best to follow many different policies, regulations, ordinances, and statutes. I expect those in attendance at all planning board meetings to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, June.
So we do have masks available in the back if anybody needs one. So the policy being, if you're not vaccinated, you should wear one. Thanks.
All right. We now need to review the minutes from our August 5th meeting. Any comments, edits, corrections for the minutes from August 5th?
The illustrated meeting.
Yes, yeah, I did notice there was a figure in there.
Did that help, Mike, to have the picture in the minutes?
Yeah. Yes.
Let's see.
All right. Seeing no edits.
I will move that we approve the minutes as written.
I will second that.
Okay, all those in approving the minutes as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay. Any communications received? June? No. Okay. All right, let's go into the minor lot line adjustment between PID 220-002 and PID 220-003 on Daniel Webster Highway from George's Realty. These properties lie in the agricultural zone. So just a reminder to the board and to all the applicants tonight, we will invite each applicant up to the microphone so we can capture it on the recording and make a brief presentation about the project, giving some general background, especially paying attention to any waivers that you might be asking for. And then we will make a ruling on whether the application is complete or not. and then we'll move forward with further questions from the board in the public hearing. So, looks like we've got an agent, David Ekman. Do you want to come on up to the podium here and present on this minor lot line?
You put the, something up on the screen, or no? You don't have, I didn't know if you had digital.
I have a PDF of it I can put, but it's actually, I need to turn it. Everybody has 11 by 17.
Okay, that's fine,
copies.
as long as you have a copy of the plan.
And just so you know, the person I gave to them, I tried to see them with colors, mirrored, and you proposed lot line with.
Okay, thank you. Yep, perfect. Yep. Okay. Yeah, this is a little bit of a unique lot. It's quite long, and it's where the old road used to be. They relocated the road and pulled it away. So what we're doing is a lot line adjustment to get a good buildable area for the lot that exists. It's fairly large, but it's like I said, adjacent to the road where the road used to be, and there's a slope that heads down to a railroad track, which it's pretty steep. So you really can't build down there. So a lot of the land is, not really accessible. If the way we were doing the lot line adjustment, it basically it puts the house in a beautiful spot. There's like a pond, it has a beautiful view and it looks really good. And unfortunately, there's that upper area was only so big. So we did the adjustment to put, build a lot would be really buildable and well suited for a home. To do that, we had to take a little land off of one lot, but then we added some land back to that lot. And we also did, it's kind of long, but we gave them, kind of an area like next to the railroad where they can walk and stuff to go with the first lot. So we I know it looks a little long, and that lot got bigger because it was small, a little bit small. So we made that one a little bigger by adding that strip. And again, the primary reason is to get a nice buildable place for the, that lot, the large lot that existed, which really didn't have a good spot to build. Nothing that was reasonable. And it also has a beautiful view. And again, the unique part of it is that it used to be a road there. They pulled the road away, so it's a big fill. It's beautiful material. It's gravel, probably 10 feet thick. I did some test bits in it for the septic, and it looks really good. But again, that's the upper part. If they don't have this buildable area, they're kind of squeezed into a nothing area. The road is up about 10 feet higher than the land, so you go in, there's one access for the two lots, and that's the way it is off of the state road. So you go, and you're kind of down low, 10 feet low when you go into the lot. But then it drops off to the railroad track beyond that. So there's like I said, there's one spot that's a really good view. And we really had to do the adjustment to make it look, to make the lot really buildable and usable as they wanted to use it. That's kind of it in a nutshell. And, there's over a couple thousand feet of frontage on the lot that we adjusted. The other lot had about 180, 179. And we made the one that was smaller, we made a little bigger to make this work, and then the other one was well over the minimums.
Is anyone else having a hard time visualizing this?
Yes, I'm pulling up the, so
I should have done a cross section. I apologize.
No,
it's kind of unique. It's
so is
Get it to load so I can.
Okay.
is it lot 3 that's going to extend along the back of lot 2 then?
Yeah, I have my numbers. I've got to.
So
Unfortunately, I didn't have a.
I had to pull the tax
I have
map
the
to
plan
figure
on
it out.
my phone here, but can you actually maybe you have the.
Yeah, hold on a second. I can just turn this.
I know the geometry of the lots. I've been to the lots, and I'm.
Yeah. From the road, looking at the two lots. Lot 3 is on the right.
Yeah,
Lot
I've
2
got
is
it
on the
right here,
left.
too, in my- Just have to
It's
pull it up.
crashed, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
So I guess where is the buildable,
Okay.
there's not total on here, so the buildable area for this lot, you're trying to create some space.
Yeah, actually, right here is the old road. So there's a beautiful plateau up here to build on.
So I can
Yeah, in that area.
show that, yeah, I had this explained. So they're trying to create a buildable area kind of in here, all right? So they'd need to move the property line over to be able to have a bit of a buildable spot in here. Yeah. Makes sense?
And in order to.
Buildable area kind of
Okay.
in here. So
Yeah.
for this lot, so they're needing to move it over so they can meet the setbacks. Yeah, so this is where they'd want to have a buildable area on this lot.
Is the land
On
that
this lot.
you've cut off of the back of lot 2 to add to 3, is that kind of equal area to the to the other? Is it kind of a no net change roughly?
Well, it creates, not equal, but it creates a nice upland area for the bigger lot.
Okay.
The reason it's set where it is there's an existing septic system, which if we could start from scratch, we probably would have built it differently.
Yep.
But so we're 10 feet, a little more than 10 feet. The minimum's 10 feet for the state, to be from the septic.
Yep.
So what we did is we did an adjustment back maybe 12 feet off the edge of that septic. There's a common driveway because it's a state road where it comes in. So there's one driveway. And they'll come in and turn to the left, and then they're going to drive onto the new lot. Right now, there's just not a very wide terrace to build on. Maybe a mobile home or something small, but it wouldn't, by moving it back a little, it gets a lot wider on that shelf. And I've got a nice area for the septic, kind of downhill, down the old road in that gravel. You dig into that's all sandy gravel fill, which is beautiful material.
When you say the old road, where is the old road located in
Oh,
this?
okay, so the state road is on a corner there, right? And they relocated it. They basically flattened the curve, so they pulled the road away. So this whole lot used to have a shelf, which is the old road. It's like, 50-foot right away, full state road.
Okay.
And so they moved it. So it created a unique kind of condition. The new road is 10 feet higher than the existing road. So you can't even, with this house, you won't really see it. It'll be down over the hill a little bit. But it's a beautiful terrace too, because then it goes down to the railroad track. There's kind of a pond down low there that they'll look over. So it makes for a nice building lot. Right now it's very narrow, and like I said, it would be tough. You'd fit a trailer, something very narrow and long. But by backing it up, the lot gets a lot wider, and it's good usable area there. So.
Mike?
Is this the lots that have two realty signs in front of them?
Yeah.
So the one with the green, the proposed new lot, I guess,
Yep.
that has an old foundation on it?
Nothing. Not that I know of. There's nothing on it. There's nothing on it right now that I've seen. I mean, I was in the upland area, mind you. I'm not saying down over the hill there isn't something else, but I looked at the upper area.
There's a house to the right, and then there's an old foundation from 1800s or so on the left.
I haven't seen that on this lot. It's a pretty big lot, but again, I'm only looking at the upper area. There's an existing house, fairly small house,
Yeah.
and then basically where the road was, it's like a shelf, and then the road kind of pinches into the other road, the new road, and that's why the shelf is where you can build on. So I'd have to research the foundation. I don't know about that.
I can see, there's
didn't
the
see any.
road right away. So it would be.
They would have shown it on the plan if it was
Okay.
defined.
It would have come in through there.
Yeah.
Could be beyond, more to the left.
That's possible, and it is pretty steep. Like it goes down to a low area by the railroad track. So we're talking about building up on the shelf, and then there's quite a lot of land down low. I think there's well over 2,000 feet of frontage on the lot that we're adjusting.
So the lot 3 is the one with the house on it. It's currently non-conforming, and this will make it slightly less non-conforming?
Yes, that's correct, and it is lot 3. I have the
Such a
map now
thing.
in front of me. I pulled it on my phone.
Okay. For some reason, sometimes the simplest lot line adjustments are so confusing.
Wait till next month.
Oh, something to look forward to. Okay, so we haven't ruled on the completeness of the application. Our staff report does indicate that the application is complete. Any questions about the completeness of this application? Someone has a oh! Or perhaps a motion to accept the application as complete. Or any questions about its completeness?
Almost done. I would move that we accept the application as complete.
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion about the completeness of this application?
I would like to, in light of this, I would like to consider amending our zone regulations to limit long skinny lots, but other than that.
Yeah.
This is going to be a weird one.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can do anything at this time with this application. I think I think we should address zone. This probably will not serve someone well in the future, but I don't. If it's in compliance now, I have no reason to object to it.
All right. Noted.
Add it to the list.
Yeah, they have it on the list.
Yeah. No frying pans.
It's creative.
Actually, it's pretty scenic down there. Kind of
Is
creates
it?
a trail. There's a railroad, there's a wetlands, the pond.
Yeah,
And rather than walk on the railroad track, they can walk along.
yeah.
It gives the one lot an access to.
That is nice.
All right, all those in favor of accepting this application as complete, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so now we will move on to any further questions from the board beyond the completeness of this application? It seems like maybe now that we've stopped scratching our heads, it's,
Right.
maybe we'll open it up to the public hearing. It is, oh gosh, I can't read the analog clock today. It is 6:47. Open it up to public hearing. Would anyone like to speak of any nature about this application? All right. A moment later, closing the public hearing. Back to the board. Any further questions, or are we ready to make a motion on approval?
So I have
Yes.
one question. I can't see what the line of sight pulling out of the single driveway for both lots would be.
But that's not changing either. There's an existing driveway there, right?
Yeah, it's on the, a good spot when you have a sharp corner like that. It's up high and you can see both, it's on the, it's on the right side of the corner. It's not a blind. So it's pretty good. I mean, we parked the excavator in the truck, we pulled in, there's like a little gravel area on the end of it, and you can see good.
If you don't mind me.
Yeah.
People drive too fast on it, I will say that, but
Looks
that's
like it's right
there,
there.
that area.
And DOT would issue any guidance on driveway permits there.
Actually.
They're not giving us an additional driveway. That's the
This is
driveway.
it.
In other words,
So
they're
it's just going to be
restricting
that
us.
one driveway that's already there.
It already serves the two lots as they are.
I remember I used to work for a surveying company years and years ago, and we used to, I know there's a bend there, I just can't see to the right, going south. We used to list, and you had to have a certain amount of, but I guess you won't get a building permit for the second lot, even though it's already there, grandfathered for the first lot, if there is a lack of.
Yeah, well, if DOT allows them to use, if they go in using that same driveway,
Yeah.
then they can have one driveway for the two lots, which is what he's saying DOT would request, so.
We're at a new subdivision, we would have showed all those distances and it's,
I can see on the tax map there that this line's gonna move over that way, closer to the driveway.
Yeah. So, in your lot is, I understand it's from this pie-shaped piece all the way through?
yeah, it's very long.
So
yeah.
it was one small lot and then this long skinny lot?
Right.
And so you will make the one lot with the house a little bit smaller and then create an additional house lot?
Actually, we're making, and because of the long, like kind of trail area along the railroad, we're making the existing lot a little bigger.
Okay, so there'll still be two lots when you're done?
Absolutely, we're not changing that. But
Okay, I
what we're doing is
misunderstood.
we're giving a nice flat area, we're trying to give a flat area with a view. Instead of putting it all on the one lot that exists, we've shifted the line back to kind of help it work. It
So
gives them
you
a
could fit a
gravity
house
septic
on it?
system.
So
It
you could
makes
fit
it
a
work.
house and septic and all your
Yeah,
setbacks?
all on that upper shelf in the nice area that's all well drained and good soil. So.
I make a motion that we approve the subdivision or lot line adjustment.
There was one condition that was recommended on our staff report, that a frontage of lots be added to the notes of the plan.
Yeah, we actually already did that,
Okay.
but we do need a permit. Because we're tweaking a small lot, we need a state subdivision approval on the existing, on the lot. And plus, we're building close to the lot line.
Okay.
So the state, we have great soils, we've done test pits, it's gonna work, it's just I have to go through the state.
Okay.
So the condition, you wanna have a condition about the state permit
Yeah, we just want to have the frontage of the lots.
yes, and that will be
Yeah.
on there.
Okay.
Actually, I've already done that change, but I didn't wanna give you a Mylar because I still have to get a state subdivision approval. But pending once the lot line moves, then I can show them that as as an approved pending, and then,
Should we have an approval on there pending the state approval as well, or is that just overly redundant?
So you're getting, I guess I didn't.
Oh,
think of that
there's
as a
an
condition.
RSA about, because we're gonna be building close to the property line, number one. Number two, one of the lots is less than 5 acres. One of them,
Right,
you
they're
know,
pre-existing. So
yeah, they are pre-existing, but,
You still gotta get state
and that's
subdivision.
kind of because we're close to the property line. There's an RSA, it's an obscure one, but that's, so I am getting a state subdivision approval.
So maybe add
with a
that as a
septic approval,
condition,
just-
yeah, state subdivision approval for
Okay.
septic.
Slash septic approval, it's the same kind of thing.
I amend my motion to add that
And adding the frontage piece, which it sounds like they've done, but we don't have evidence of it, so.
and add both those pieces.
Okay.
So the two conditions of approval are receipt of state subdivision and septic approval. That's one, and then the other is
Getting the
Show the
frontage of the
frontage.
lots on
amending the
on
plan to show the
yeah,
frontage
yeah.
of both lots. Okay. I will second the motion, if nobody has.
Thank you, Phil. Any further discussion from the board? All right, all those in favor of approving this application with the two conditions, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Dave.
I'm a little nervous about the next one.
You're scared, you?
You did a little bit. I think I don't feel very well at the end of September.
Oh, thanks.
Don't be intimidated by it.
I might actually already be out of town though.
Oh, geez, yeah. Well, no, John.
I do have a vacation. I do have a
I'll
vacation.
skip out.
I might be here for that one though. All right.
Does anybody need the next one? I just got a copy of the plans.
Send it.
Phil
Rhapsody.
distributed everything very,
Well, only to a few people.
yeah.
The ones
I
that
have
were here
two-
at the time.
I have two of these. Okay, so next up, we have a site plan application from TMH 6311 LLC for construction of a sandwich shop with associated driveway and parking for property on Boulder Point Drive, PID number 213-002. This property is in the industrial and commercial development zone. We've had some updated plans that I think got sent out today, so I'm not sure if all the board has a chance to review this, and we do have the updated staff report with changes from today that we may need to review as we're going through this, but I think
Can I give you a quick introduction about it, and then
that'd be great.
Mike McGinley
Yep.
and here talk about it. So you had, I think I showed you a conceptual plan for this, putting in a sandwich shop next to where Roma Joe's is. So this got a little bit, I guess, I don't know what, the fast and furious getting the plans together. So I've been talking with Mike and Mike McGinley, the owner of, or the representative of TMH 611, whatever it is, LLC. And so they put together a plan. My original staff report I sent you last week, had a few missing pieces. I've shared that with them. They knew about this, but they wanted to get something in front of the board. In their work on this, they talked to me Friday last week, right after I'd sent it to the board, saying they were working out an amendment to help reduce the wetlands impacts. So they put that together, got it to me on Tuesday, and I only sent it to you today because I just got too busy with things, and so I apologize for not getting it to you earlier. I do want to point out, though, that we didn't get this posted on the website and that kind of thing, so abutters have not seen this new plan. I did this afternoon write up a new staff report, which I guess I should give to Mike and Nick, of just a couple still pieces. The main thing, I can let them run through the actual design of it, but that was kind of the progression of of what's happened with it. So what you have in front of you is the plan that came in Tuesday, the latest version that's different than the original one, all right? And then the staff report you just had picked up here tonight, anything in red is where I've kind of made some edits and changes to it.
You said the paper copy is the current copy?
Yes.
Okay.
And there is a drainage report that I did not print for you guys because it's
Good.
It's long. Is that your last copy?
Yeah.
Oh,
You need one?
yes. So we don't
Anybody else
have,
need one?
am I seeing, we don't have elevations for this?
No, the one thing that is still, I would say, missing is the building design. It's sort of a,
Okay.
you've got the plan here, but not the Anyway, they can go through and explain the details.
Yes, so if you are the representative for the applicant, then please introduce yourself, give us a brief introduction to this project, paying particular attention to any waivers you're asking from our site plan review application.
My name is Nick Schedule. I'm an engineer with DuBois & King Engineers. As June mentioned, the plan that was submitted with our application has been modified. I guess I'd probably want to review those with you just so that you could feel comfortable accepting the application as complete. I mention that because I think these changes are beneficial to the town in terms of impacts to wetlands and just overall impacts to the site. Our goal here is to, when we came with the conceptual plan, I think it was noted that we were requesting parking above and beyond what the zoning requires for the site, and as a result, needed a special exception from the zoning board. So we did go to zoning and get that special exception for up to 21 spots, I think. Working with the user, Rap City, who's looking to occupy this building, trying to meet the parking needs for them above and beyond what was required by the zoning ordinance. But working with them and noting how much wetland impact was required in order to accomplish the plan that was submitted with the application, we decided to reduce the amount of parking and reduce the impact to under 3,000 square feet for the site. So just some background on that. We've gone from conceptual plans with the site that included like 7,500 square feet of wetland. When we had an auto parts store conceptual plan for the site, and then conceptual plans for this application where we were at close to 4,000 square feet, and now we're down to 2,990 something. So where we changed the parking specifically is 2 parking spaces right in this location, and this is where the wetland is largest in this location, so it reduces our impact to the wetland there. The other modification was that we had a retaining wall that was going parallel with this building in this location, and again, the wetland is right along the edge of this dark dotted line. So in order to construct a retaining wall there and keep the building itself exposed, it would have required, a strip of wetlands to get impacted in order to construct that retaining wall. And we talked with the builder about options to minimize impact and reduce construction costs. And one thing that they came up with was to design the foundation as a retaining wall, where we would have access to the building, on 2.5 sides, and then this back corner would kind of be set into the hill about 2.5 feet. In terms of drainage for the site, where impervious is getting collected in, the site runoff, this is kind of uphill going this direction, obviously. Anything running down the hill is going to get trapped by the retaining wall. This is clean water that's going to get trapped by under drains behind the retaining wall, or the foundation drain for the building. That gets directed to a catch basin, and surface runoff will run to this catch basin, which is located kind of in the natural drainage path of that wetland. And clean water will pass through the site and just continue on its natural path that it was going on prior to this construction. Underground detention and infiltration to the degree possible. Stone, pipe and stone, more or less. It's kind of like a leach field, but it has a lot bigger storage. Again, drainage that comes down here, we just built a driveway culvert here, but rather than have it be a culvert with a deep hole, we have it as a catch basin. That's kind of the gist of it. It's got public water and sewer, so the waivers we're asking for are related to showing on-site wells and on-site septic systems, which don't apply. And then I think we asked for a waiver for the Mylar, just because we're not subdividing anything. I'm not sure anything's going to get recorded. Certainly, if as-built Mylars are required, we'd be willing to provide
Those
them.
later, yeah.
That's kind of the gist of it. I don't know if you want to have questions before you accept it.
So I unfortunately did not feel like carrying my entire subdivision regulations down the hill with me today. So, but I do know that having elevations is part of our requirements for accepting an application as complete. So,
We do have a rendering we're willing to show you tonight. If that's required, we'd be willing to. We've been working with an architect, with the builder. So it's, as is often the case when you're doing site planning, the building design follows the site design. So I wouldn't say this is in stone in terms of final design. I think Mike had some, can answer some questions.
Keeping in mind that the back wall is going to be a
Yeah, I
retaining
think
wall.
they've got a perspective where, like, you can kind of see where, on that far left side, there'd be a retaining wall that kind of comes out and, you know, it moves away from the building quickly in this corner, just to provide access. We've got a sidewalk here. I didn't mention there's a screen dumpster for the site.
Maybe somebody with more experience, or June can remind me, do we have any special circumstances about multiple businesses on one parcel?
We do allow that.
that was an amendment we made to the zoning, I think.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. People are having a good time. So June, I mean, I think most of the board members reviewed, well, I mean, certainly all reviewed this before we got here, but we didn't have time to go through all the stuff that got turned around today. And I know there was some questions about the completeness of the application. You had time to go through this?
So I did kind of quickly, but on my staff report that's updated in red highlights a couple things, but I can go through this. Again, like Nick mentioned, there was a little bit of a reconfiguration of the parking lot building area. So the previous plan showed an 1,800 square foot building. This is 1,725, so slightly smaller. 17 parking spaces as opposed to 20 previously. So, and the zoning board did grant the special exception to allow more than 125% of the minimum. So we have that in the ordinance. That's taken care of. So the number of parking spaces is okay. Water sewer's there. You know, the site does, you guys are familiar with it, I'm sure, it slopes up pretty steeply behind there. The wetlands he's mentioned. The stormwater management system, you know, I guess I wasn't an expert on these things, so you might want to ask a little bit more about the detention. So he said tonight that it also has infiltration in it also, somewhat, the design.
It allows for infiltration, but there's a pipe at the base of that system. So it's designed, it can be designed in either way, where we're accounting for some of that infiltration in our storage calculations, or we're not accounting for it. So usually we will account for it based on test pit information, and then it would get tested during construction to verify that it meets that. But there's a drain at the base of it. It's a basically a low flow device that relieves the system, so that after a storm event, the storage that's taken up during a storm event has a place to go. So it drains out that system and then creates the space for the next storm. You know, it's going to infiltrate across the entire surface area of the system. It's fairly significant for the amount of parking that's in there, just based on the requirements for the hydraulics of the system.
Did you do test pits there?
We've done test pits on the site prior to the Aroma Joe's submittal, so those are included in the Aroma Joe's application. They're the same test pits.
From the test pits, were you able to determine roughly how high the annual high water table is below grade, roughly?
It's going to be pretty close in the wetland area, certainly.
Yeah, interesting.
The design itself will, in fact, lower the water table as a result. So, like, we're going to be where the system is. We're actually building up. So we're going to on the low side of the lot, we've got a retaining wall that will rise between 2 and 8 feet, and then it'll kind of basically create a level area that's fill. So that fill will be, mostly the stone and pipe for the stormwater system.
Okay.
And then towards the back half of the site, it's cut in with a retaining wall, and that's about, I think that's about two to. It's only a foot high here. It's about 4 feet high here. 5 feet highest in this one, 5 feet high here. It'll have an under drain behind it, so.
How on the northern, on that northern retaining wall, is there going to be a drop off over there above kind of existing grade? Is there a retaining wall on
this side?
on north side? Yeah.
Yes. So there's a retaining wall.
Yep. How high is that one going to be?
It goes from 2 feet in this area to 8 feet to 4.5 feet.
Okay.
6 feet, 6 feet. So we've actually got a guardrail along the top of it.
Okay.
And part of what changed from the conceptual when you saw it, and I think we showed a certain amount of parking and a certain amount of impact as we went into the design, and we started designing that system with the guardrail. You have to keep the guardrail a certain distance away from the wall in order to keep those two systems independent. And so that's when we kind of started to lose those parking spaces if we wanted to stay within a certain wetland impact, which was our goal.
I guess, man. Go ahead, John.
I actually had a couple of questions about the way these two different businesses relate to one another. A couple of questions. So one of them had to do with the proposal, I'm not sure if it was ever finalized or not, to consider the bridge between this plot of land and the next one over. And I'm wondering if this construction or drainage or any of this would impact the ability to do that, if in fact that's still on the docket.
So Mike can speak better about where they're at in the process, but my understanding is that they're still, the Mike and the abutter are still working out with contractors on precise location. In terms of where the wetland is the narrowest, it's my understanding that it would be located in this location, because this is where the edge of the parking lot for this abutter is almost in line with their building.
Okay.
Here.
Oh, interesting.
So it wouldn't impact that walkway. All of our development for this application is above this retaining wall. So this walkway is planned for.
Okay.
Interesting.
I think they need to construct a little portion of it on their portion of the property to see it.
Sounded like
Is
it sounded like the culvert was on the abutter's property, so if there was going to be a bridge, it was.
It will be doing 99%.
Yeah, it sounded like it was not related to this site plan, which is why I was okay
Yeah.
Jim
letting.
and I get along fine on
Great.
this. This is not an issue. We're fine.
I think that's a good point there, John. Sorry, June?
So the other things on my list here were just, we did get funds from the applicant, holding it in escrow, and the escrow agreement assignment, so we're ready to go to have the town's engineer review it. I just didn't, I think actually he did get sent the plans, but I have not signed the contract for him to do it. I'll do that tomorrow. I just thought, at this point, pending the planning board approval, we can wait on that. or acceptance, sorry. So the missing items that I had suggested before were the building design. They did just show you a conceptual, at least one copy of it, a starting point for that to work with. There's a couple things that when it comes in this way and there's these last minute changes, one thing I would like to see is just sort of a full set of plans put together, because we got, just as one PDF.
Understood. Yeah, I think when I sent you the updated, I only sent you the two sheets. that
Right.
changed.
And just so before I send it to Mike Vignali, it'd be nice to just have one complete
sense.
package. And any note, you put in a couple things in email, like in the email Nick sent to me stating they're gonna loam and seed any disturbed areas, no additional shrubs or landscaping. So again, there's a comment there, but we'd like to see that kind of tied into, as a note on the plan. So they've given the information, but it's all, these last minute things, they get in bits and pieces, so it takes a little more time to pull together. The sign plan was, again, conceptual. There's no dimensions on it, but at least there's something on the colored sheet that I handed out right here. I'm assuming this is a wall sign, but there's no dimensions. So again, that needs to be in scale with the building, so we need the building elevation, dimensions, and looking at the wall sign in relationship to where it sits on the building and the size. I did get drainage calculations in. I have that. Traffic analysis.
Mike Vignali will go over that as well.
Pardon?
Will Mike review
Yes.
the
Yeah.
drainage
Yep.
calculations? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You can do a better job than me. So the traffic analysis, again, the email, Nick stated that the traffic analysis was underway and will be completed next week. Initially didn't anticipate any traffic, but they want to finalize it and would work that out. I believe in our regulations, that's an extra study you can ask for. It's not necessarily, a piece that has to be there for acceptance. Because usually you look at this kind of thing and say, oh, there might be an impact, but I had suggested that just to kind of keep them moving along. Wetlands permit is supposed to be submitted the next couple weeks, but I guess is it 3,000 square feet is the trigger for a major?
Yeah, honestly, we're trying to get this on a schedule that gets construction still this season. Wetland permitting takes a certain amount of time once you cross over a 3,000 square foot threshold. So, obviously, limiting our impacts is good for everyone, we think, helping us on schedule, but also just, we always want to avoid and minimize what we can when we have to do impacts.
The calculation of that is 2,996, so just under 3,000. Good job. Yeah.
Good design. Is power
And
gonna
then
be?
the construction timeline, I guess, is as soon as possible, right?
Yes, yes.
But not until you get approval.
Okay,
So I would say that the bits and pieces are there. Whether we'd like to see them packaged a bit better, yes. So we can work on that with the applicant. I think that the board could accept it at this point, but again, it's not ready for any kind of approval because town engineer hasn't looked at it. But now once we get a new sort of packaged piece, all the pieces together, adding in notes about, landscaping, whatever, getting a building design, then we can send it to Mike Vignali and have it ready for the next planning board meeting on September 16th. And hopefully, the sooner the better. We can get, I think Mike Vignali knows it's coming, so I'm sure he'll work on it pretty quickly. And then we can get comments back to you, to Nick, and
If I may, with all due respect, that's going to impact the project moving forward, because I myself would be reluctant to ask Nick to go ahead and to file a wetlands report, which is going to take weeks to get accepted down there. He's got to do it. We're not going to get this thing in the ground this year, and then we do run the risk of having a vacant lot next year. Everybody has worked very, very hard in these times right now to get to this point. Yes, I agree. This wasn't the smoothest one, but with all of the players involved and trying to minimize the wetlands and to put everything where it's supposed to be, any sort of a delay. I myself will be looking for some form of a conditional approval. I think, I would hope the board knows me well enough that Nick and I will make sure that everything is satisfactory satisfactory as we go forward. I know that Mike is very busy also to go ahead and start reviewing it. So I wish we were here, you know, in June or July and not the tail end of August.
All right, so we've got to accept this application as complete. I think, or we've got to rule on the completeness of this application. Despite the sort of everything's kind of in bits and pieces here, I'm comfortable that we have enough information and that we'll get a complete information by the time we get to our next meeting. So does anyone have any discussion about the completeness or any comments about the completeness of this application?
I'm somewhat concerned about the lack of building details and signage, but I think as long as that information is going to be forthcoming, I'm willing to consider completeness.
Thank you.
So I make a motion that we accept the application as complete.
I will second that.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of accepting this application as complete, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, any abstentions? That was what I need to ask. I would like to say, I really like how everyone, as soon as we say either accepted or approved, everyone takes a pause, is it accepted or approved before each motion? I know I have to do it too. So, all right, so we don't have anyone zoomed in. Any other questions from the board about things they'd like to see? I mean, I'm sort of operating under the assumption that we don't have a complete package for us to put forth an approval this evening. If anyone wants to, if we can discuss that, we can also open this up to put the public hearing now if we want.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I think we can open up to the public hearing.
Okay.
I'm somewhat uncomfortable doing conditional approval without seeing the engineer's report at this point.
Yeah.
But I very much like the concept, and I'm confident we'll be able to work towards a solution.
Mike?
So I sat on this board, and I know I kind of bring up these anecdotal examples, and we had a much less information on a much bigger project just up the road from where this site is. It was called Midstate. And the planning board thought that it might be beneficial to wait. And we had someone stand up from the board who was helping them with their financing, and by the name of Ed Wixon, and stood up and said, "We can't wait." And we all knew who Ed Wixon was, and the planning board felt comfortable based on the developer, based upon prior dealings with the people involved. They had a good track record, and we all know that Midstate ended up working out for everyone involved. So I think it's worth a discussion to see what we could do to accommodate. I know that when myself and a few others were tasked with economic development for the town, this is where the rubber meets the road on what can we do to make Plymouth a welcoming spot for development. And that was what everybody kept saying. We need economic development in Plymouth. And what we're seeing here is the underpinnings, and this is what we need to embrace. And if there's anything the town can do, based upon the knowledge of working with the developer who's done so much for the town of Plymouth, and I think if there's any bending that we could do, it would be for this projects like this, and for someone that we've worked with many, many, many years on this board. So, yeah, I'm sure there are reasons to want to push it back a month or 2 or 3. But we can look within and say, do you feel comfortable with it? And that's why we're not a machine that plugs out an answer. We're human beings that drive by the businesses that are on Tenny Mountain Highway, and whatever we can do it gets back to other developers and other businesses on whether they want to come to Plymouth, if they've got a choice between Littleton and Plymouth. And this is the type of thing that can draw them to Plymouth, what we do possibly tonight, so.
So I do want to point out that I think that it sounds like June has put a lot of balls in motion already on this, including getting some of the funding in place so we can get the engineer review happening quickly. And it sounds like a lot of the things that we're going to ask for are being put in place before we need to ask them, so there's enough time to do them. I'd also like to point out our track record with Mr. McGinley in particular on this. In the 6, almost 7 years I've been on this board, I don't think we've approved every single project that's come to this board. And I do think we have an obligation to go through our due diligence and make sure this is fitting, it's fitting within the regulations that we do have. So, other comments from the board before I open it up to the public hearing? It is 7:24. Any comments from the one member of the public? Okay. No one on Zoom. I am closing the public hearing moments later, bring it back to the board.
Or considering continuing it if.
Right, so we could, yeah, we could continue this to our September 16th meeting. So we could, any comments from the board? What do other folks think?
Mike, I appreciate your comments very much, and I would be kind of curious to see what you think a conditional approval might look like. I had this, let me finish first though. One of my biggest concerns is, given that there are abutters who need to take a look at this, they have not had sufficient time to review this for a public hearing, because this all came in without getting posted to the website at the very last minute. And maybe if this had gotten posted earlier, I might have a different opinion. But I think for sufficient notice to the abutters especially, which is an important procedure, I'm not sure it's there for a full acceptance of this.
So I would agree with that. So we haven't notified the abutters?
We did notify abutters, but they did that,
Fine,
we always have to notify like a couple weeks before the
Did
meeting.
any abutters get back to you?
No one has gotten back to me, but the plans that were posted on the website were the old plans, not this revised version,
So this revised version lessens the impact.
Yeah, I
and
mean, the site,
thus, from a butter perspective, is
and we don't have that
less to
full,
object, not more.
full sort of package to put together for and they won't have seen the building design, the sign,
Go ahead, Mike.
So were there abutters concerns on the plan that impacted the site more? There were none.
We have heard nothing from.
Then I'm almost seeing a path forward. If we can give them a conditional approval so that they can work through the things that they need to start in motion to get this in for this year, and we can make the board and our advisor comfortable enough to move forward, we know the applicant. I would say if there's a way that we could do this conditional approval, that I would say it's worth us to spend the time and hammer this out for the conditions. I see 5 in front of me.
5 do you see? What 5 in particular do you see?
So, the building design much more than the picture of a proposed building. We would want to see that, and this would all have to be worked out with June and Mike Vignali to make sure that it's not just the square of where it's going to fit, but that and we could leave that up to June, that the specifics of how it's going to look is going to fit with the town. So it would be the building design, the landscaping on the plan. You said you have it on an email, but to actually add it to the plan.
It just says loaming and seeding, so there's no,
So we would need a more detailed landscaping plan?
well, that's what they're suggesting, so the board could ask for some shrubbery or something, again, with the retaining wall, it's a little hard to visualize, that's sort of but there's no new landscaping proposed, basically it'll be grass in any of the disturbed areas, so.
So something to work out between June, Mike, and you with the landscaping plan, dimensions for the sign and where it would be placed. And we can talk about a traffic analysis. There's one in the works now.
I think it's up to you guys to request a traffic analysis, so if you feel like it's necessary, I've got someone who's basically, we prepared something for the Aroma Joe's, if you recall, so we would more or less update that.
So I love the forethinking that it's not off of Tenny Mountain Highway. If it was off of Tenny Mountain Highway, and that really complicates it, but it's coming off of Boulder Point Road. It's sharing the driveway that's already been approved. My thinking is that takes one off of the 5 conditions if we don't require a traffic study. And then the last thing, the 4th thing then would be, my eyes, permit for, that the permit, the easier permit under 3,000 square feet would need to be, we need to have that.
The state would require it.
The state
anyway.
would require it. So I'd see 4 conditions that I could feel comfortable giving an approval tonight so that the thing could get into the works, because September 16th, you know, it could be snow flying shortly after that. We just don't know.
Mike, in that set of comments, you didn't mention the Plymouth Village and water and sewer. Do we need any sort of condition?
I think that's a boilerplate.
Yeah,
They have comments right now.
Jason did write another email, which I did not put in the revised staff report, but, I mean, they do have requirements and conditions. I think I have it in here. I think it was a lot of the same, you know, they have their own permitting system and, you know, requirements for you know, it's up to them of how those details of connecting to the water and sewer.
So they would not give approval for water and sewer. They would not,
So we,
I'm sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
sorry, thank you. So we have an approval from Plymouth Village Water and Sewer to stub to this portion of the site. So we actually worked that out while we were doing the Aroma Joe's, in consideration that at some point we need to button up the front part of this lot and not disturb it when we bring water and sewer. So, and as well as taking sewer out of Boulder Point Road itself, which is scheduled for some road maintenance work. So we did that in advance. That just gets us the stubs. So we do have to do a full application to Plymouth Village Water and Sewer that outlines this particular use. So we know there are some conditions, you know, typical conditions of approval to get water and sewer on the site. Those, I think they're in the staff report. I've reviewed them. They're nothing that's going to impact the design of the site or anything on the surface of the site. One, I'd say the biggest is that because it's going to be a restaurant use, that they'll need a grease trap for their sewer service connection, and that's just a buried structure tank that we've got plenty of space to locate on the site. And I think that was it. I mean, the other one, he mentioned that the water service wasn't shown in the same location as where we had shown for their stub permit, but I'm not sure. I just need to work that out with Jason, because I'm almost certain that I am showing it in the same location, but that work isn't completed yet anyway. So ultimately, the service is going to go in the location that Plymouth Village is going to approve it.
One of the things I remember we had a fairly extensive discussion about with Aroma Joe's was the landscaping and the particular species of shrubbery that was going in, and discussion of migratory birds and all that sort of thing. And it's not necessarily a crucial linchpin of this or anything, but I do remember a pretty extensive discussion about that with Aroma Joe's on the same piece of land. And I'm kind of curious about the decision not to put any of that on this particular project.
So the Aroma Joe's utilized bioretention for stormwater, and because that portion of the site is obviously on the lower portion, and there was space to provide stormwater in surface, you know, structures, We made sure that all those plantings, we had a landscape architect involved with selecting those plantings, making sure that, I think you're exactly right, I think there was discussion about certain berries that were produced by the trees. So, I mean, we kind of are relying on that landscaping to serve the whole lot, and our impact on this portion of the lot is really to try and minimize that, retain the natural landscaping of wooded area behind the site. So at the top of the retaining wall, there'll be limited amounts of clearing just to keep drainage that comes down off that hill, and then it'll be natural wooded area and wetland that we're maintaining. And then all of that wetland now, I think, has kind of like a little wildflower type mix to it. So that would be maintained where kind of in this area. So that's kind of going to still maintain a natural landscape. So that's why we're not really providing a landscape plan, so to speak. The landscaping, we've got some grass islands. We're going to utilize those areas for snow storage on the site. I know snow storage becomes a big deal, so if we were to try and plant in those areas, we'd lose our snow storage. If I were to, we trying to balance, I guess, and making it, work for the user.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about the hours of operation for Rap City? Do we have those? Or are they, my big question is, do they serve breakfast?
Good, sir, one.
Breakfast?
No, they do not, to my knowledge.
So my thinking is that it's unlikely that the traffic from these two businesses is going to be coincident, so any traffic report we have for Aroma Joe's is probably sufficient to cover. I mean, the patterns may be different, but I doubt we're going to have, like, I suspect that we'll have a lot of traffic in the morning at Aroma Joe's, and we may see traffic in the afternoon or evening from Rap City. I guess the
Peaks won't overlap.
The peaks won't overlap, but at the same time, the traffic on Boulder Point Road may be different at those two times too. But I'm fairly comfortable not requiring a traffic study on this because of the alternating peaks of
That's a
the two
good point.
businesses. That's my thought. I don't know if anybody else has other thoughts on that.
I'm okay without a traffic plan. I think you bring up a good point. I do have some concerns about moving forward with a conditional approval. I feel like the list is unknown and long, partly because we haven't seen the engineer's report. And so I wouldn't be comfortable putting a condition of approval being the applicant will meet all the requirements of our town engineers from this review. So, June?
I would just want to remind the board, I didn't put it in my staff report, but things that you've been seeing in the last few developments. So I've got, I think, 7 more to add to Mike's list, if you don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, that any comments from the town's engineer would need to be addressed, which is what Rebecca said. And, so he would basically try to strengthen that to say that they, it would have, the plans would have to be revised and to meet all requirements from the town engineer. And I guess if there's, and something within that, a statement saying that if there's a significant revision, it would need to come back to the board in September. In terms of the placement and movement of location of parking, building, something like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it might be more like the pipe needs to be a little more detail on this or that, erosion control, but those
Different
are kind of-
size pipe, maybe
yeah,
they can work
how
out.
they manage the construction and pipe sizes, but I would, especially with that underground storm drain system, storm water system, I would definitely want Mike to understand and give us some guidance on that. I'm just not familiar with it. The applicant would be required to do a development agreement like we've been doing on other ones that kind of puts all these pieces together. And they should do that within 30 days of delivery of the agreement. I actually, I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit, so I have this from other, while you guys were talking about this, I grabbed it from other things. Establishing an escrow agreement and an escrow account for periodic construction inspection by the town's engineer. Cost of that will be determined in consultation with myself and the town's consulting engineer, and the applicant's engineer. Have to have that in place before any construction begins. Prior to construction, the applicant should be required to post surety, either a bond or letter of credit for any site reclamation, restoration. The amount of surety to be determined by the applicant's engineer, reviewed by Mike Vignelli, our engineer. The surety has to be maintained until the project is completed. We could reduce it over time, but we need to make sure we have something there. We definitely would want stamped plans. And as-built plans within 30 days of the completion. And then conditional approval expiring, this is from Aroma Joe's, I think, December 31st, 2022, because otherwise it's good for a year. So give that extra, through next fall, unless substantial progress is made on the site prior. And then the board authorizing the chair to sign any final plans and the as-built plans. So those are pieces I just want to remind you of running through that. Again, I think the bigger issue is, are you comfortable with the pieces you've seen and sort of passing off your sense of approval to pretty much Mike Vignelli and to a certain degree me. I'm always a little, I don't want to require additional lands. I don't want that burden personally of additional landscaping or something like that. I would be loam and seed if we're comfortable with that. If you want something more, then you should ask for that. And go ahead.
I think in an effort to kind of relieve, I guess I would say it's relieving staff of the requirement to do the building review and the architectural, maybe that could be a conditional approval that could actually come back to the board for review. We'd be willing to do that if that made people more comfortable about that portion of it, I think. I don't know if that...
So come back in...
Just for the, for the building and even the sign. I think the sign requires separate permitting anyway. Yes. So, but that, because it's an architectural thing, it's more, I guess I would consider it subjective in terms of meeting what you guys want it to look like ultimately. It's probably not, I wouldn't say it's going to change a ton from what you've seen, but there might be an opportunity to work out details that staff wouldn't want to make a call on just based on zoning. Just a thought, and I...
So you're asking for an acceptance or of, well, not acceptance, but approval of the
parking lot.
Development of the whole lot, the parking lot and the whole plot, but not the building itself.
No, I would say it's a conditional approval of the site plan, and one of the conditions would be
in the building foundation.
Yeah, it's basically a condition that.
Can I add one more thing to that? Could you, the building, the sign, size, location, in the landscaping plan, which maybe some of that might be a roadblock for a couple of us, that you kind of work it out, the balance with the Roma Joes and the natural, so that we could see it and where the strips are just grass.
Yeah, I guess I would, yeah,
Can I just put a pause on this right now? I feel like we're putting an incredibly long list of conditions here I feel like this is beyond, in my opinion, this is beyond flexibility. This is pretty much bending over backwards, and I think that this is my opinion. I'd love to hear other, I just don't want to keep building this list of approvals or conditions to approval if the board is leaning towards continuing this to September 16th. Because I think we're circling around this area of trying to make this work, and it's not working for me. So
it sounds like.
Hang on a sec, Zach.
The list that June gave, again, I've only been sitting sort of listening to the board for the past few months, but it sounded like the list that June gave is a very similar list.
Yes.
So it's definitely a long list, but at least in my mind, I wouldn't take the list that June just produced and say that makes the list longer. Those sounded like very normal things that we end up with as conditional approval on pretty much everything.
I guess
so the list really becomes the building design, the landscape plan, the signage plan, and approval from our engineers' feedback.
Yeah, to me that's a long list.
So that's the long list you're talking about. Those 4 items.
So that's what he's offering to come back for approval from the planning board next month. So he's reducing the amount that we would need to give conditional approval tonight?
Conditional approval is not subjective. Conditional approval has to be, is it met or is it not? You cannot, a board cannot say, come back to us with your building and see if we like it. We have to say, if you.
Oh, no, not a conditional, he would come back.
Well, I mean.
For the approval on the.
If we issue conditional approval today, the conditions have to be yes or no questions, otherwise they're eligible to be challenged and we have no grounds, like, they have to be clear. So I think something like a plan, like, if it's present and if they present a building plan and nobody likes it, it's present, they check the box, like, we're done. We have no way to say, yeah, we don't like this, sorry, we gave you conditional approval last month. Like,
I would propose the building.
I'm more comfortable considering all these conditions, given your track record in the town, but I'm still somewhat uncomfortable with not having the results of the engineer's report. That's the bigger concern for me.
So I guess with conditions of approval, you have conditions that need to be met before, basically before construction can begin, and then conditions that may carry on during construction or at the end, forever. I guess another one was just thinking of too is, I do not know enough about these underground stormwater detention systems,
Chambers.
and there's got to be some kind of a long-term maintenance concern with it, because it's like a leach field. If it gets filled with salt and or sand and sediments, it's probably not going to function too well.
And the plans that we submitted with the application have details on the design of that, and it has a operations and maintenance plan, notes that are on the plans themselves that
Is that what's shown on?
Document and require the maintenance of it. So
Is that the big grid on C2 under the main parking
Yeah.
lot? That's
So,
a large, large system.
and I can speak to, they're extremely common in construction as we move forward with less and less space to develop and more constraints on how we can deal with stormwater. So it's no different than a pond in that it provides storage for large storm events. It creates, open space within pipes, and then a percentage of the voids in the crushed stone that is bedding everything. So those calculations are put into our H&H report modeling system, HydroCAD. It uses, USDA common methods for calculating runoff for the site. And, just like any stormwater system, it holds water so that it can release it at a controlled rate that mimics the pre-development runoff. So I feel really comfortable in that it is going to satisfy the town's engineer, and that the town's stormwater requirements are met by this system. And so, I mean, ultimately, if I would say we're kind of, it's at our risk when we go into a conditional approval, because, like Bill mentioned, I mean, it's a yes or no thing. So we have to, once it's a condition, we have to get the approval. So until we satisfy the town's engineer with meeting the stormwater, then the condition isn't met, right? So that's kind of where the trust comes.
So
Go ahead, Mike.
I would just have a procedural. Phil brought up a good issue, that how would approving, giving our yes to the building, the sign, potentially landscape design, how does that work from today to a month from today? In order for him to start the project, he needs some sort of conditional approval, but do we have to give this conditional approval for the building and the sign, or can that part wait? I'm not sure how that would work.
So I honestly, and this is no disrespect, Mike McGinley, there's many Mikes here. This is no disrespect, but I really think we need to take the construction timetable out of our calculus, and we need to make the best decision that we can based on what information we have. So, we'll do our best to make, so I guess that's all I want to say.
So, to simplify it, and again, it's up to him, if he starts this project and starts moving equipment to a spot that's got a similar business use right next to it, which seems to fit, it's up to him, like he said, he's on the hook if he doesn't meet our standards for what the building, the landscaping plan, and the sign would look like. He's pretty much in a lot of trouble if he doesn't get this approval a month from today to get our, yes, that looks great, go ahead. So I've got 12 conditions, and I think, like Zach, they're all pretty much not very different from a lot of other applicants. The one thing that I feel more comfortable with, he's got a business right next to it that's very similar size. He's done everything that he said he would do, and I feel comfortable that I don't think the town's going to be out anything, and that maybe we'll get some tax money a little sooner than what we would have otherwise if he's got to wait another season. So,
in part, these regulations are in place to prevent the catch-22 of approving this and then saying a month later, well, no, not this part.
Right.
So I'm just looking at the calendar here. I mean, it's the 19th. I'm actually taking some vacation time next week, which is, yay. So I will, if the board, certainly tomorrow, I would let Mike Vignali know that we want him to review the plan, but I don't really have a full set of plans to give to him. So we'd want to get that, I can ask Nick to, once he has a chance to pull together a one PDF file, to send that and copy me. He can do that while I'm away, and we can get Mike Vignali going on it. It could take Mike next week, but we don't know how many comments he may have. He may say it looks great. He may say we need more details about this and that. So if he has comments or any comments, I'm not around till the week, like August 30th, that week leading up before Labor Day, to kind of work out those pieces. And Labor Day holiday, I'm just being realistic of, it's going to take a little bit of time. I think at best we can expect engineers' comments and everything maybe being done by Nick's busy, Mike Vignali is busy. There's going to, assuming he'll have some comments, Nick will have to make some revisions. Mike will have to review it again, send it back, maybe more revisions, or then sign off on it. We're probably looking at like Friday the 10th, roughly, and then the next meeting is September 16th, 4 days later, business days. So, if the board wants to come back and see this and have it ready to go, I don't think we're going to lose, in all due respect, I don't think you're going to lose more than 5, 6, 7, 8 days of time to be able to construct, even if you can't put the shovel in the ground until we have everything signed off. And I'm just doing looking realistically at the calendar, how long that could take. I don't think you're going to be more than 5, 6 days ahead if we waited till the next planning board meeting. But this time of year, a week could be a lot for somebody too. So,
if I may, a week is a lot to the
I knew he would say that.
A week is a lot to the leasee.
Yep.
A week is a lot when you get that DES plan stamped down in concrete, and you sit and you wait, just like the 2.5 years that I waited for the Riverside plan. So, in my opinion, I doubt the party that's interested in this site will hang around.
So how long will the wetlands permit take to get, typically for a minimum impact one like this?
It's got to do it. It's got to go down to the state. They, as I understand it, understood it the hard way, it sits on somebody's desk for up to 10 days before that person signs off that the plan is complete, and then it does go to the reviewer, and then the reviewer has supposedly 30 days to render a decision.
Okay, so you can't start construction until you have that permit?
I can go ahead and make everything work. I can get my client in place. We all know that we're heading towards something. If we just delay, quite frankly, I don't have a good vibe about it. That's just me.
So they can't start until they get the permit, which could be another month anyway, so.
Right, given that schedule, I mean, I feel fairly confident we can come to, I mean, I think we need some details. I'd like to see a review from our engineer, but given that, I'd feel more comfortable continuing this until our next hearing.
Is your issue that you wouldn't be able to submit that wetlands permit until you had conditional approval?
I don't think I'd want to keep spending money unless I got a good feeling here that this thing is going to go through.
I don't have issues with the site at all. I mean, unless the engineer has issues with the site, but.
Can this, pardon me, I'm sorry for speaking out of turn, but can this issue come up at the work session? Can we shave 2 weeks and come back in 2 weeks?
We've got a full plan for our work session coming up on September 2nd. So we've got guest speakers coming in, and we're trying to reserve our public hearings for, yeah, I just don't think we have time for that, so.
There'll be a lot to get in order and out to us.
Yeah, especially with June's vacation coming up.
One other thing, Rebecca, is that in the past, a small application like this wouldn't even be going to our town engineer for review. In the past, we would rely on the engineer that submitted the plans, and it was not until you reached a certain level of engineering difficulty did our town engineer look at it. So we have an engineer and they're willing to abide by everything that our town engineer would require of them. Conditional approval would mean they'd have to meet that. So given the situation of the timeline that we're working with and the holidays that are coming up, my feeling is whatever we can do to help the applicant is something that we're doing to help the town.
I was just going to given the timeline anyway, as June and others have discussed with the other applications, wetlands and so forth, and engineering reports, and it doesn't sound to me like anyone on this board really wants to hold this up. And I think we're all pretty positive about this, to get, to speak to that notion of like, are we behind this? I mean, speaking for myself anyway, yes, I think I am. But there are certain things in the regulations that are there for a reason in terms of process, and they really haven't been met here. And I suspect they will be. I don't really have any doubt that they will be, but they're not here. And I would prefer to continue this.
Any other comments from board members we haven't heard from?
I think I agree with, I think we all agree with John. We definitely don't want to hold this up, but for me, there seems to be too many check boxes, or boxes that need to be checked before continuing. I really hate to do that, Mike. I don't see any other way.
And likewise, I don't mind approving this with conditional approvals, but I think there are too many conditions that are subjective for us to approve this. I wouldn't feel confident with that at this point.
I don't have a problem with doing it with the conditional approvals, but I also, the other side of that coin is we just got this. There is a lot to go through, and I think in light of the fact that you really want the engineer to review all this stuff, it's a double-edged sword here. I really want to see this go through. I would love to do a conditional approval somehow to make this work for him, but we did just get it. It's really not been a lot of time. I just heard of Rhapsody today, as a matter of fact.
Rebecca, what is going on our work session, beginning of?
Housing. We've got 2 guest speakers talking about housing.
It sounds like this could be a quick continuance if we could push it 2 weeks back. And maybe we could fit it in. I'm willing to stay a little bit later, if everybody else is, to do our job and see if we can accommodate. And that's willing to work for the applicant. I'm willing to bend over to help.
Based on my schedule, I probably would not be able to get to the board anything from our town engineer until maybe Monday the 30th or Tuesday the 31st. Monday or a couple days before our meeting on the 2nd. That's the other part. So, I'm trying to get to, things so you have the weekend to look it over. that kind of thing. And I have no idea when I come back, I may have a zoning board application too. We don't know what comes in the door. So I can't promise that this will be the first thing on my pile on Monday the 30th. Just because there might be something that I have to by statute take precedence on. So I'll do my best, you know.
I mean, I would prefer to continue it to the 16th. We could certainly continue it to the 2nd and then continue it again if we don't have the information. I don't get a lot of time to review stuff, regardless, so even if stuff does come in on the 31st, that gives me virtually no time to look through it. So I think at this point, just let someone to make a motion so we can determine what we're going to do. The options are approve of the list of conditions, continue to the 2nd, or continue to the 16th.
I guess I would like to make a motion. If it passes, it passes. If not, then we'll look to make a continuance if necessary. But I feel comfortable based on the history of the applicant with the town, knowing what the town would like to see, my past experience with the select board. So I would make a motion to do a conditional approval upon, it looks like 12 things. So the first would be a building design that is to the town's liking for June and the engineer. Number 2, a landscaping plan balancing the Aroma Joe's plan and the natural features of the site. 3, the dimensions of the sign and where it would be located. Number 4, the wetlands permit to come in. Number 5, that the comments from the town engineer must meet the requirements, that the approval would only come with if it meets the town engineer's requirements. 6, it would have to come back to the board if there is significant revisions to the plan. Number 7, the normal development agreement within 30 days, you mentioned. 8, establish the escrow account. Number 9, letter of credit, surety. And 10, stamp plans within 30 days. Number 11, the approval would be for 2 years, did you say? I forget the date.
December
19.
31st, 2022.
Okay.
Mike,
And-
I'm sorry, what was that last one?
11 was an approval that it would extend to December 31st of 2022. And then the last 12 would be,
The board authorizes the chair.
the chair to sign the plans. That would be my motion.
Is there a second for that motion? Okay, so no second for that motion. Am I understanding that from everyone? Okay.
I would motion that we continue this to September 2nd, despite the fact that we will have quite a busy agenda for that meeting. I think if we can get the engineer's report back by then, I would feel more, and building plan, sign plan, some of the issues we've identified as being deficient, if we can get that information, I'd feel much more comfortable issuing conditional approval at that time.
I second
second
that. Oh, Mary Ann.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of continuing to September 2nd, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Thank you.
So everybody's got the list of what we're looking for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll work with Mike. While you're on vacation,
Yeah.
while you're on vacation, we'll work with Mike.
Think about that, Mike.
June, am I correct in understanding that the only thing you need to send to the engineer is the same packet you sent out originally, but with the revised sheets
Can you
included
get
in
that
it?
to me as soon as possible tomorrow, like a repackage?
How are you at making PDFs, Mike? Because I'm on vacation for 1 day tomorrow. That's my plan.
And you're out next
Probably,
week?
I think I can assemble it, or I can have someone in the office assemble it. I mean, it's basically taking what I gave you once,
It
taking
just-
2
then I
sheets
can
out,
have it to
putting
send to
2
him.
sheets in.
Yep.
June, is Mike capable of taking the one package and replacing these 2 sheets that were supplemented?
I can have someone in
into
the
it?
office do
I
it.
would rather
It's
have
not-
somebody, I'd rather have it's the applicant's responsibility to produce
Yeah.
the information.
I understand.
I'm not gonna try to piece together PDFs. I've got plenty more to do.
Someone in my office can do it.
I have people in there,
Thank you.
engineers in training to do that.
Thank you.
All right, next up, informational and pre-application reviews. Do we have anything for that, June?
Not that I know.
Okay. And it looks like we have no unfinished business.
Ooh. That's nice.
Actually, before Mike leaves, we should probably, we have a Riverside Landing update. Do you want to stay for that?
All right, so we'll just do the Riverside Landing update since Mike's staying for that. So June, did you have an update on Riverside Landing?
Yes, I have an update on
okay.
Riverside. So Mike informed me, and now I can't remember what day, but maybe a week or 10 days ago, that he has obtained the alteration of terrain permit from the state of New Hampshire, which he's been waiting for, even though they had another 30-plus day delay on it. So he got that just recently, maybe, was it very beginning of August or so? Yeah. A week ago, 10 days ago maybe. And so today I got an email, because there's still the conservation easements and the trail easement issue outstanding. So I did get today, a few months ago, probably in May, I had gone over those easements, sent some comments, thoughts about it to his attorney, and so she sent back a revised copy today. I didn't really open the email at all. I just, again, so I just wanted to let you know that that is another piece that we are working on, and I'll do my best to move ahead on this. And but ultimately, those easements, I think we left it that planning board chair and myself could work on those easements and get it what we felt to be the best, but ultimately we'll go to the select board too for approval. So we would first go through that review. We also need to have the town's attorney review that. And I believe we have money in escrows. I can't remember if we did or not.
You don't.
I don't have that yet. We will need that for the town's attorney to also review those documents. So still a few more pieces to go and steps along the way, but we're working on getting there. Is there any other updates to add to it? Or?
No, I've been concentrating on other things and waiting for the permit, so I haven't really aggressively marketed or spoke to folks about track 2 at Riverside, because I didn't know if it was ever going to happen. As I say, it was just shy of 2.5 years we waited for that thing. So the 2 pieces of property that June was talking about is, it's my understanding, 26 acres that was part of Riverside originally, west of the Oxbow. So that's everything, not west of the Oxbow, west of Claybrook. So that 26 acres that is behind the common man, that will go to the town. And the other piece of property that I had to purchase to make everything work is on Fairgrounds Road. That was the old Hannigan property, 31 acres. So that will go to the town also. So those are the 2 pieces. So that paperwork is going to June, and then going down to the state for their review. That takes care of the state, and then Carol and I, Carol Stackpole of Frank Michel's office in Meredith, we've started to go over the trail. That'll be the interesting one, because that is the interaction between Riverside and the town. So hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks or so, we'll put this thing to bed, and it's a long haul. But there's great potential for that piece of property out there too, if it materializes. But it is a bugger to go ahead and develop too.
So I just want to clarify, though, that Riverside Landing LLC will retain ownership of those 2 lots, and the town will hold a conservation easement on them. So you're not giving it to the town. You're going to maintain ownership of it, and then we will have the conservation easement, and again, the purpose of these easements is wetlands mitigation, so they're very restrictive. This type of an easement is to protect the habitat and everything, so it actually is very restrictive even for recreational uses, which there's been a lot of confusion over this, but that's really set by the state's wetland permit and aquatic mitigation program in this process of getting the wetlands permit. He has to do something to help protect habitat nearby within the watershed. So his approach was to obtain these parcels. Kind of the easement will set some really strict responsibilities on the owner to manage it in a way that is very maintaining it as such, which means it's not there for mountain biking and lots of recreation and hiking and that kind of thing, which may be different what the original thought was, but the purpose is protecting the habitat, not this type of easements.
And the town will monitor the easement.
Yes. Okay. So, Mike, and in the email I noticed it said that Carol mentioned meeting an August 31st deadline, so I did not know that there was any deadline, and I'm not sure I can promise anything about
I
that.
believe Lori addressed that. We can take care of that, whether it be Cindy or Carol to Lori down at DES.
Yes,
So
that's
they'll-
going to take the town more. I mean, I can try to get I probably won't have a full review, and then the select board won't have a chance to look it over and do any kind of approval, or a town's attorney. There's just not enough time in that, so.
Not a problem.
Okay, that had me a little worried. Thank you for.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, request for bond release, O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Oh, this is a good one.
Oh.
And actually, yeah, it's pretty simple. So, Mike Vignali, our town's engineer, emailed me maybe 10 days ago or so. Actually, earlier than that, I think. A while ago, end of July, but well, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, saying that he had gotten an email from a representative from O'Reilly Auto Parts saying, hey, we still have this bond for $9,147 hanging out there related to the construction. And this was, again, a bond surety that was posted back in, I believe, 2015, March of 2015. So when the planning board approved that site plan, I don't know if anybody was on the board, Rebecca was, one of the conditions was, similar to what we just talked about, having some kind of mechanisms to address any site issues in case the development went awry there. There were some issues about a pipe, I guess, a culvert under the road and a baffling, and so I sorted through I found an old file, not where it should have been, but luckily I found it. I found some plans, kind of sorted through down the basement, sorted through it all. Long story short, I actually found the actual bond, in case you want to see the performance bond. And I've reached back to, the good news is that Mike Vignali has been our town engineer since that was constructed. He did a construction inspection throughout that project, and he actually said that he had written an email or something at some point, maybe in 2016-ish, or again, and followed up again in 2020, stating that he was okay with it and everything was all set. So I got him, because I don't have that email, it wasn't in the file, he emailed me today, said, hi June, I did inspect the baffle and it was installed per the plan. That was it. The project is 100% complete and the bond should be returned, in my opinion. So that's the best I have to go by, which is better than it was actually a happy ending. But technically the board has to authorize release of the bond. So you should make a motion.
I move we release the
Second.
return of the bond.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Maybe it has a quicker. Maybe I should have shortened my story.
Give the money back.
So we will get on that soon to get that off our books too.
Pretty sure that's
Okay.
the first bond release I've seen come to a board vote.
I think there's been some release, but not by the board, but technically the board, you know, you have the authority to do the plan, so it's a matter of finding the information and carrying on from there.
Sorry to cut you
That one
off.
was a magic, there was some magic on that one there, having the files jump out at me. What else was on there?
Our September 2nd meeting, we'll start with a presentation discussion about housing with George Reagan from New Hampshire Housing and Carmen Lawrence from Lakes Region Community Developers.
Good.
I think they're just going to give us some information about housing in the state, and trying to remember, June and I met with both of them just to discuss this work session, but housing we're in a bit of a crisis in New Hampshire, and they're going to fill in some of the blanks there so we understand a little more.
Right?
And zoning ordinance definitions.
I don't know if we want to get into this.
I don't think we want to get into this tonight.
Well, I can give you guys I did put a little bit of time into a quick handout here about, actually Mike and I met last week, I guess, about going over a few things after our last planning board meeting, talking about the zoning ordinance. We met for quite a while, actually, which was good conversation. And I know that others had offered to kind of help with this, but we had a first sort of conversation about it. There's a few things that I guess that came out of the conversation that I just wanted to give you guys an update that I was trying to explain to Mike, that this, I'm not looking for decisions now, but this is what's going to happen as we go looking at zoning pieces. So the first page here, the first half, is really just 3 areas of things that have come up that I've already mentioned. We have a definition of commercial service in our zoning ordinance, which is what is listed here. This is a very old definition, because I don't think we have a lot of shoe shine shops anymore. But you might, so we don't necessarily have to remove these things, but you can sense that sort of dated aspect of what a service is. So I have been taking the liberty to interpret storage units as a commercial service. It kind of says it fits that. So I would like to kind of consider maybe what else, what are newer uses that maybe fit within there? And I think it could be a benefit to just add that to the list, because that, back in 1961, when the ordinance was first written, I don't think we had storage units. But whenever we make those kinds of changes, you have to go back and say, where are these things permitted in what zones? So I just wanted you to realize that it would, commercial services in general, the current definition as it sits, we allow it in agricultural, village commercial, highway commercial, industrial commercial, and special exception in civic institutional. So if we put in specifically storage units, those are the zones you're allowing it. Or would you prefer to have a separate definition?
It's not, in my mind, it's not really a service. I mean, it's
We don't
you're
list it.
renting real estate in a
but
way.
we don't really have anything anywhere else, so that's,
Right.
So what
It
house
doesn't
zoning-
align closely with anything else we have.
Right, so
but-
we have them all over town, so we've been
Right.
allowing them. So when we had the recent, proposal from Dragonfly, I said,
Yeah.
hey, this kind of fits in there. Otherwise, I have to make a determination that says, we have nothing that says storage units, so therefore they're not permitted.
Right.
And we have
Seems
been
closer
permitting.
to like a warehouse. Where
Yeah.
would that fit?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the definition of a warehouse, I think we have, but it's more about, so then you have to go chasing down these other ideas. So again, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole right now, but
I think this is the time to be looking at questions and not trying to figure out the answers right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
so I invite you to start searching the ordinance. This is the kind of thing. Same thing with outdoor recreation. When you read that definition, we want to we don't really say, we're silent about campgrounds, and we have had a proposal for a campground. It was accepted as such as, the board never really analyzes this a permitted use. Previous staff probably said yes, it was allowed. But my read of the zoning ordinance is such that we don't really allow campgrounds. So outdoor recreation's the closest thing. It's allowed in agricultural, highway commercial, industrial commercial, special exception in village commercial, and civic institutional. So if you added in the word campground to outdoor recreation, then you're saying you can have a campground right downtown. Obviously, probably not going to happen, but that's the thing. You have to make sure we're not sort of capturing, so some communities will have much more specific definitions about campgrounds and a whole set of conditions that have to be met, special exceptions, septic, floodplain, lots of types of things. You really think about what a campground is.
I think there are some state regs on that too.
Well, the state has some regulations that kick in, yeah. So my suggestion would be to actually creating a separate piece to deal with campgrounds, because we know we may have an application that comes back maybe next year. I don't know if they will pursue it again or not, but somebody else could. Given the way, we are part of an outdoor recreation economy around here, it might be something for us to get ahead of with other parcels of land in town that might, along the river or mountains, that kind of thing. So that's something that I would, consider, ask you to think about kind of building its own thing rather than just pulling it into that definition. And the same thing with agriculture. We had a question recently about kennels. This was months ago. I determined that a kennel fits under the term of animal husbandry, so it's allowed as agricultural use.
Maybe it's the same thing as a storage unit.
I don't know. So there's weird things that sort of pop up, but if I just determine that, I'm also saying that these are the zones that it's allowed in. So I think that one's sort of okay.
I like that one.
But, so and these are kind of my first steps on that. I think the two biggest ones that we've had more recently to think through are campgrounds and storage units. And where do you want to allow them? Do they fit within those definitions that the best we can sort of look at?
I think it would be good too if we get maybe some of those people who are willing to dig into the zoning a little deeper. So just look at what other communities might be doing for these same things. I think it's helpful to see how other people may be handling them, whether they're doing a good job or not. Not any job at all. It's it'd be interesting to see.
So the only other piece here, that the rest of this document is really just about housing, to kind of give you a little bit of homework prepping for the September 2nd meeting. So I didn't make this too pretty or give you too much guidance on that, but I put the table of uses from our zoning ordinance that deals with where the zones that different types of housing is, and then I went through and I think I've got most all the definitions for housing. So I just wanted you to have that kind of, hopefully this kind of looking at it in this format might be a little bit easier and cleaner than flipping through all the pages of the zoning ordinance, because we have a whole lot of, again, kind of odd definitions that maybe need some updating as we work on housing. And then the pages 3 and 4 deal with, page 3 in the middle there is a section on non-permanent sort of housing. Again, camping, motor homes, travel trailers. We have this tourist home, again, kind of an older definition.
You didn't include bed and breakfast, which I was
you're right, I'm sorry.
I was curious why that's limited to 4 rooms, a bed and breakfast.
I forgot the bed and breakfast in here, so I can...
That's in there too. It seems like an
Just
odd
to keep
distinction.
it smaller than a hotel?
So a 5-room thing that looks like a bed and breakfast is a hotel?
I don't know.
Yeah, and again,
Well, I mean,
that's all this
Are
tonight.
you looking
so-
for an answer?
Don't ask me. Every time I read this, I was like, I don't know. You can't read the mind of past planning boards or...
so if it's more than a
Or
B
5
and
rooms.
B, it becomes a rooming house, because a rooming house is by definition at least 5, but no more than 16.
And that also has different definitions. That also has different.
Yeah, or a tourist home.
Right.
Well, anyway, another day.
I think tourist home actually aligns it pretty closely with like Airbnb.
Well, is owner occupied.
Oh,
Well,
true. Ding,
yeah.
ding, ding. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the other thing, the Airbnb,
Yeah.
short-term rentals, we're gonna have to discuss
Right.
at another meeting soon.
Yeah.
So this is kind of prepping you for that.
Yeah.
Try to think about where short-term rentals fit within these definitions, and
Right.
they don't. So again, if something's not there, it's not permitted. What the question is, what do we do about it? And then the bottom of page 3 onto page 4 is our section 416. I should have put that all on one page, about accessory dwelling units, which was added in a few years ago by conditional use permit. And this, we had a phone call. I was like, oh, everybody says, oh yeah, we allow them by conditional use permit. And I was like, oh yeah, allow them by, and I'm like, well, how do you do that? You know?
Do we have one?
So, some communities have a more detailed process of how you go about getting a conditional use permit. We have no application form, we charge no fees, we have to notify the abutters. So I need to dig a little bit into state statute, but I'm not seeing a lot of guidance there. So I just feel like this is another area. Does this board want to start? It does say, I mean, the planning board has to issue the conditional use permit, but right now I feel like we could put it on the agenda, somebody could just walk in and tell you what they're doing. They don't know guidelines about plans and that kind of thing. I think that would be a good piece to what do you need to do.
I think there are other things that the planning board is authorized to do through conditional use permit.
It's all under innovative zoning techniques.
Yeah, but I remember issuing them before for things other than
Yeah,
accessory
it's the
development.
question, I think this is the only thing right now in our current ordinance that we use the CUP for. So we could do it for other things.
But I think
we
by
don't.
statute, there are things that allow it.
Could, but we don't
Yeah.
we haven't adopted that into our ordinance, so.
Oh, interesting.
So you can do it, but you have to
But
state
if the
that.
statute allows us, I mean, we kind of have to do it unless we deal with it
But
more
what it allows-
restrictively, right?
My understanding, what it allows you to do is to put those things in your ordinance and handle them in this conditional use permit way, rather than going to the zoning board.
Yeah.
But if we don't have it in there, then you can't. You know,
We're not
it's like
required
it's-
to do it that way.
Right.
It
So the
allows
town
us.
would have to adopt it, through the zoning process, so. So those are a few thoughts, again, I'm trying to kind of get you thinking about housing, and I forgot the definition of bed and breakfast, but, the main thing being, pointing out, we only allow dwelling units of multiple unit dwellings of 3 to 6 units, and where you can do that is, has some limitations to it.
Would it be possible, I'm curious, do we know, I'm starting to think, I know that there is one of the developments on Fairgrounds Road was approved as an over 55 community. Do we have an inventory or a rough idea of what developments in town were approved as over 55 communities?
Not at my fingertips in any sort of way.
I mean,
yeah.
it gets at affordability and workforce housing requirements. It's part of that, I think.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how that falls into place.
I don't think we have anything age-specific in our ordinance. Again, it's sort of either, that's really a developer's choice to
Yes.
limit it by age or not. So we don't say you can or can't, so it's just, again, we look at it as,
Wouldn't it be recorded with the approval if it is that way and somewhat enforceable
be.
if it's in the deed,
it could be.
In theory,
in theory?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some holes in that, in the RSA anyway, but.
Yeah. In general, nowadays, I think they're thinking that don't do any age-restricted housing.
Yeah.
Before, that was a bigger issue, but now there's such a need for housing,
Right.
I think our biggest issue is, do we want to find a way to go above that 6-unit maximum to allow some buildings, and what would be the conditions around that? Only in existing buildings, or, by special exception? What zones, I don't know if it's legal to say you have to have at least a 12-month lease. For the town to say that, I doubt it. But that might be another piece to think about. So I also put in here that definition of family-related and unrelated, because it ties to the student issue in town, that you're technically not supposed to have more than 3 unrelated people. There's some places that are grandfathered that have more. And that's been typical in university towns, but to try to prevent, 8 people living in a small apartment share with 4 in a room or whatever they do. So enough on that. Again, I could go on, but it's getting late, and been trying to pull together some pieces on this. But one of the things I want you to think about, if you just say, and a change to one definition might end up allowing kennels downtown or something without meaning. But if you really think about it, that could be one of the places where, a kennel might actually fit more than corn or something, I don't know.
There are places.
That's all I've got, that's enough.
All right. Anything else from the board? Any public comments?
Motion to adjourn?
I'm not gonna ask. All those in favor?
Aye.
I totally missed that, was that a motion?